Today on the podcast, we talk to my dear friend Bandit from the TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube channel, Flim and Flask. We get into all things bourbon. We spend a lot of time talking about the art of creation and what it takes to make something each and every day. And then, of course, we get them all riled up about movies. All that's next on the Incredible Hult podcast.
And as I said, my guest tonight from Flim and Flask, you know him as Bandit. Bandit, my friend, how are you?
I'm doing well, man. How are you, Eric?
It is, I'm doing great. It is a pleasure to have you, and I can't wait to kind of dive in because you've been doing this for a short time, but a lot of work has happened, and that's kind of where I want to start, Bandit, is so what happens in June that you start the channel? And I'd like to start early on in the channel, you talk about how bourbon is new for you. Was that at the same time, or were you, I know, people might not know the connection between you and Mike and that whole crew, but were you doing stuff with Mike beforehand and you're like, oh, I should probably do this with a camera? What happened in June?
Well, so in June, the short answer is that, so Mike and I have been friends for the past 15, 20 years. We met in high school. We went to college together. He was in my wedding. I was in his wedding. We're tight. My kids call him Uncle Mike. So we're all close.
Yep.
He recently moved from Plano, Texas, up in Dallas, down here to Houston, where I'm at. And so he's like, hey, you got to come bourbon hunting with me. And we have another friend, Ray, who I went to middle school with. He posts a lot of stuff on TikTok, and he got me into bourbon. And so when Mike got into Houston, he was like, hey, you should just come with me. And so I was on the tertiary edge of the whiskey and bourbon thing. I was into it as just a person who likes to enjoy it, but I was not someone that was breaking down mash bills or looking at the big six distillers and just thinking about it all the time. At the time, I was just caring about movies. That's all I've ever really loved is movies. And I fan theorize at anything. My wife will want to watch a movie that she thinks is silly or whatever. And I'm like, I have to know the end of it. And I want to think of well, if that was like this, maybe if we tweak these two things, it would be so much better. I can't help but binge and watch. So that was kind of my thing. And I remember one day Mike sent me a challenge. He's like, hey, if you were going to post videos on any platform, what would your name be? And the first response I had, again, I'm playing out the scenario in my head, is what if I made this time traveling character that had come to the future, but he was still from the past? And then I was like, well, that'd be really cool, but how would I actually execute that? And then I was like, well, I'm a dad. I'm a father of 4 kids. I'm goofy. I got a lot of dad jokes. My name is Bandit. My kids watch the show Bluey, and the dad's name is Bandit. So what if I did this bourbon bandit? And I like the alliteration. And he was like, all right, you should do it. Give it a shot. And so I was like, all right, bet. Let's give it a shot. And very quickly, making podcasts about movies is very talking head. There's not a lot of inspiration. Yeah. You're kind of critiquing somebody else that they actually did it. And Bourbon Bandit kind of gave me an opportunity to kind of scratch a creative itch inside of a niche of a niche. And I was like, oh, there's people here. And movies and bourbon are best shared with friends. So I was like, all right, there's something to this.
That's how it starts. But what's interesting is if you go through and you watch all the TikToks, not that I did that in preparation for this, but if you go through and you watch all of them, the first 2 months is a lot of you talking about how you're a dad and you're just getting started and you're just kind of on this journey and you're learning. But I was on a live with you literally a week ago and you're like, here's some mash. How do you go from I'm just kind of playing around in this space to allow me to teach you how bourbon works in the world, friend, in less than 4 months? Because there's a ton of people out there that want to understand this space, and you have very quickly not only done it in real life, but then figured out a way to turn it into a mediated experience that people can enjoy with you. What happened there?
I mean, this is a strategy that I have taken my entire life, in my entire career, is just surround yourself with really cool people. If you're the funniest guy in the room, it's not a funny enough room. If you're the smartest woman in the room, it's not a smart enough room. I've always been able to hitch my wagon to somebody else's star and ride along for the glory. But I think also I'm just a really intellectually curious person. I want to learn. I get excited about it. I hope I'm a people person. I think being likable helps you get around. People want to work with people that are likable. So I've been really fortunate. I've had a lot of doors open because I know Mike. I remember the first time I went on a barrel pick, literally, I just said, "Hey, can I go with you?" And he was like, let me see. And so there's a cautionary tale, like who you should ask permission to and who you shouldn't.
Sure. Yes.
I'm not advertising to everybody, just ask. But at the same time, the worst someone can do is say no. And if you're polite about things and willing to learn. But I remember I kept saying this one time. I was kind of like using this, like, oh, I'm a new to this. And I was like almost like a verbal filler that I was using in videos. And as I was watching these videos, I started to say to myself, well, I know a lot about this now. And so it was a calculated, conscious effort to say, don't dismiss yourself, because there is a little bit of imposter syndrome. That's really easy to say, hey, I've been doing this for 2 years. And while I've only been making videos for 2 months, I've got some knowledge I can pull back on. And maybe I don't have the most illustrious palate to pick up things on my nose or my tongue, or the way that the juice finishes. But I do have a lot of insight because I've been able to talk to distillers and get some behind the scenes looks that maybe not every person gets. And that's not to say I'm special. I'm not. Again, I work in technology with really, really smart people in AI, and they're so much smarter than me. But I get to help them communicate and see, like, hey, you smart person A, make sure smart person B speak the same language. And I'm going to help facilitate that. So it's kind of been a fun thing to use, like videos and specifically like making tiny films where it's like, hey, this is actually thought out. Write a script, write a story, think about what this means and how this impacts some of like the bourbon jokes and stuff like that. So I'm like trying to put my own little spin on it. And I was like, wait, if I'm doing this and I'm thinking that much about it, I'm not a beginner anymore. I've left the novice stage. And so I got to leave that doubt or those words behind.
So I want to get into your creative process here in a second, but when I was talking to Mike, he had a very interesting piece he did a number of months back where he was talking about the very first bottle that he got, and it was Heaven Hill, which was the first bottle where he tasted it and he tasted the things he was supposed to taste. So Bandit, do you off the top of your head know the one where you were? Is it the same one? Like, which was the one where you're like, aha, I understand this now?
There's two bottles that work in parallel to make it happen all for me. So I've got this bottle of Jack Daniel's single barrel proof. It was a gift of mine from my buddy Ray Bourbon. Shout out to Ray. I grew up with Ray. Me, him, and Mike are all buddies. He gave me that as a gift many years ago. And I was like, oh, this is great. He's like, oh, it's really good bourbon. You're going to love it. And I was like, oh, Jack Daniel's, that's great. This is a $66 bottle. It's not like crazy expensive, 130 proof, but it's very flavorful. It's really good. I still recommend it to this day. I drank it for about a year and a half-ish. I probably went to like 12, 18 bottles. And one day Ray comes over to my house and he says, what are you doing? Because I got a glass with the Jack Daniel's in it, but it's also got an ice cube and it's filled to the brim with Coke. And he's like, have you been drinking that for the past 18 months with Coke? And I was like, yeah, that's what you do with Jack, like Jack and Coke. And he's like, that might be the best Jack and Coke ever, but that's not the way you're supposed to be drinking this. Drink it straight. So I was drinking really high proof stuff from the moment I started drinking. And he was like, all right, let's go to the store right now. Let's get a bottle of Four Roses Small Batch Select. It's lower in proof, but it'll actually give you some different flavors other than just the things that you typically think go with Coke, the caramel, oak, toffee, those very bourbon notes. And that Small Batch Select was the first time that I got like some baking spice, some of the cracked pepper, some of those things that go more savory and less sweet, more of the dried fruit, more of the red fruit. And I was like, okay, I want to experience more of this. It's not just the same old. I kind of think of that bottle as like baby Elijah Craig barrel proof because
sure.
It's on a budget, but it's really good flavor. It's not super hot. It's just a phenomenal bottle. And I was like, okay, I'm going to start buying a couple bottles. My wife was like, oh, that's cool. We'll have things to make cocktails. And now she's like, now we're driving ourselves into financial ruin, just trying to stock the shelves. We're opening our own little liquor store here.
Yeah, which is the interesting part about this is like obviously community is the big part about it, but I always question that. It's like when do I stop? Like what is the point by which I don't need anything anymore, right? Like
yeah. I mean, I think the good thing with like movies is there's always more out there.
Sure. Yes.
I collect physical media. It looks like you've got some Funko Pops, so you can probably appreciate that. Where it's like, at what point do I need more there definitely is like something like I've got this full shelf here. I've got another shelf you can't see adjacent here. I've got shelves on the other side of the wall that you can't see, and they need space. So I've got the good news for me selfishly is I've got plenty to go around. But I do think that your palate kind of gets to a point where you're like, I don't need that. So you got to set a criteria. So like with my DVDs, and I collect 4K UHD DVDs because I believe in physical media. I want to support directors. I want to support the filmmakers, and I want the studio to know, like, hey, someone loved this movie enough to watch it in the theater and to buy it, and I don't want to chase it on whatever streaming platform it jumps from every 6 months. I don't want to chase it. I want to be able to watch it. So that criteria is like, do I love this movie? And if I love it, that's a good thing. And then 2 is, do I want to show support to the people that made it? And then 3, do I want my kids to be able to enjoy it someday or like now? A lot of stuff. My kids are all really little, so
yes,
they appreciate it. But someday I want to be able to say like, hey, I had this. I want to share it with you. So thinking the similar way, like with bourbon is this like one of a kind? Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. Is it something that like I will never see again? And then 3, is it something that I really want to share with somebody? Because I can't possibly drink this all by myself. That's not safe, responsible, ethical, whatever. I'm not bashing anybody. No degenerate hate from Bandit. But it's more fun with friends. You know, going to watch The Hangover with friends is a lot funnier than watching it by yourself.
Yes. Yeah. It's not as funny in a theater by yourself, for sure. So, you know, we're in you and I are talking in the holiday season, or in our world, it's the allocated season. And so there might be people who are new to this space who are getting bottles that, I don't know if this is fair or not, but this is like that are punching above their weight class, right? They're not quite ready, right, for this. So if somebody gets into that and they get a gift of, you know, a unicorn of whatever their unicorn is, because everyone has a different one. You know, what's your advice on how they approach it to make sure that they get that Four Roses experience that you had, so they can enjoy it on all its many levels?
I just got this text today, and this is a great question, by the way. My neighbor across the street from me says, hey, I got a good bottle today as a gift. And I was like, cool, what'd you get? And he sends me a picture of a George T. Stagg.
Yes.
This is no hate towards my neighbor Shane. Shane's a cool dude. But the biggest bottle I think that he's tasted is either some Garrison Brothers release, because it's big down here in Texas.
Yep. Yeah.
And then the Jack Daniel's Frank Sinatra, which is like 98 proof. And when he drank it, he was like, it's kind of hot, right? And I was like, it's not very hot to me.
And if I want to pause for a second, Bandit, just to kind of level set. Like, for those of you who don't know, this is part of what they call the BTAC, and like George T. Stagg, depending on who you talk to, is like the greatest available bourbon that isn't called Pappy. Like, it's the one that everybody goes to look for.
So you can see my text is the blue. I immediately blow off. I'm like, okay, I'm not going to. Again, he doesn't know anything about like the depths of the profile, what the mash bills are. He doesn't care either. And sure. I don't think there's any like. There's no whiskey nerd shaming in that. Like, good stuff is good stuff. But I was like, in short, I'm just going to tell you this. GTS, George T. Stagg, in my opinion, is the best bottle in bourbon. And you will find ones that are more expensive, but you won't find that are much better on shelves, period. If you find ones that are better, it's in locked cabinets, behind closed doors that you don't ever get access to in a retail space. And he said his stepbrother had given it to him to be his best man in his wedding. I said, well, your stepbrother is a good brother. I'm really happy for him. And whenever you pop that open, let me help you break it open so we can talk about it. But I mean, it's what a great gift. I mean, MSRP on that starts like $150 to $300. Secondary market is upwards of $800. So that's a really great gift. And I don't have any brothers. Otherwise, I probably would have got lots of those.
I'm sure you would have. All right, let's kind of move around, because you just got back. You and the whole crew just got back from the Kentucky Fill Up Day, which my world is marketing. So for me, this was like a giant genius thing. Yeah. And the fact that they were able to, if you haven't been following this, the idea was that you bring any empty bottle that you want of Kentucky bourbon, and they would fill it up with Still Austin for $1. Spoiler alert, that's absolutely illegal. And so they had to kind of pivot day of, which, you know, is a testament to what that team's able to do when there's a group of people who are expecting to do this thing. But from your experience, and I know you still have more content coming out, but like, what was the day like? What was your favorite moment? tell us about it, because I know you've got a great relationship with those guys.
Yeah, so I have a bunch of stuff still on my cutting room floor on my laptop that I'm combing through right now.
Your cutting room floor, like you're just
get it out. That's what it feels like, man.
Cutting the film.
I am not like the typical content creator. Like, I have my phone and I kind of record it in an editor and then I just batch it out and send it out. Like I want to. I am by no means like a Christopher Nolan type, but I watch his stuff and I'm like, well, I want to put Easter eggs in my stuff. I want people to notice. Like, did he do this? So as we're planning this out, we packed up. I have a big van, an old GMC Savannah.
We'll get to that in a little bit, but yes, you do have an old van.
We we call it the bourbon bus because we go hunting with it. So we had a couple creators, Colin's Quest for Whiskey, Tyler's Bourbon Clubhouse, and Cinna Bourbon. We all hopped in the van early in the morning, drove out to Austin from Houston. Whirlwind, we get there. People are everywhere. It's nuts. Very tame nuts, but it's a beautiful day. It's like 72 degrees. It's sunny. It smells good because you got food trucks in the area. And then I think her name's Katie. I hope I get that right. Their marketing, one of the people on their marketing team walks out with a megaphone. It's like, hey, I have an announcement. We just found out in the last hour from our legal team, our lawyer called and said, what we're doing is highly illegal. So what we're going to do instead of you filling up your bottle is you're going to come in with your bottle. We're going to let you sticker it all up. And we're going to give you a bottle of sealed cast strength Still Austin, and then we're also going to give you a unique, one-of-a-kind. This is a highly collectible item.
Yes,
and not just
clearly
a stickered funnel. This is a limited edition Kentucky Fill-Up Day Still Austin Whiskey Company funnel with strainer, I might add.
Nice. Yeah, I like
highly
it.
Collectible.
Yes.
And you can take this funnel, your bottle, and the bottle they gave you, and you can go off premises somewhere that they don't own, and you can do your own Kentucky Fill-Up bottle. So it was funny because they actually end up giving you more.
Yeah.
And you have a sealed bottle. So all you have to do is pay $1 and bring your old garbage, and you get a whole bottle out of it. It was super fun to see everybody. I released a video today just combing through some of the lines, like asking people, what bottle did you bring? What do you like about this? Are you excited? And I've kind of Frankenstein that footage up into a couple videos, but people were excited, and it's cool to see buzz about something that you care about. Like, I'm a super fan. I would dress up in costumes to go see movies. So seeing like all the Wicked stuff, and like, oh yeah, people care about that. That's kind of cool. Or seeing people line up for bourbon. I can't do that in Kentucky. I live in Houston, so driving to Kentucky to do all that is not realistic. But then to go see their team, like the way I've been thinking about it is it's all the nuances and the speed and the pace at which they did it all. It's kind of like watching a magician disappear, Hercules, the gigantic plane that Howard Hughes built. This coordinated effort from so many people, from the legal team, the marketing team, the distillation team, even their production, their operations and facilities. There's so many people that had to work together. And I just give like Iris and Jake, Mike, their whole marketing team so much credit for just killing it, because it was really fun to be a part of. I'm a nobody. I got to just hang out and shoot some videos, but everybody could feel the energy and the buzz. And I thought it was really cool.
So for people who consume your stuff, they may or may not pick up the fact that there's probably a healthy dose of Anthony Bourdain in the creation process here. So what is the process by which you're at this point you're creating? Because the stuff that you're making now is obviously vastly different than how you started. And so let's take the Halloween video, like from stem to stern. How long does that take for you to kind of script that out and then shoot the thing and get it? Like, you talked about the cutting room floor and how you're not shooting it all on the iPhone, which feels judgy, but that's okay. But like, how long? There's
nothing wrong with anyone using iPhone.
I know. Relax.
The story matters more than the crew.
Everybody calm down. It's fine. Anyway, how long does it take? Like, how long did that thing take for you?
So the Halloween Finish Forever was an idea that I had. Again, just trying to think of like relevant things. And I had just gone to see Terrifier 3, which is a whole nother beast for people if they're not used to movies. But I know you've talked a lot about the marketing. I thought that was super, super cool. Not necessarily like my thing stylistically, movie wise, but I was like, hey, I want to go see all of these because I want to support people doing this stuff on their own. So I took my Flask and I won't watch my movie. And I was like, okay, this is different. I can't do this on TikTok. It will get banned. Even what I did do,
even what you did is banned. Like I just looked today, I'm like, it's still banned. Like no one even watched it to see. Like there's nothing to ban, but okay.
But I just thought to myself, who's like the most iconic Halloween character? I love John Carpenter. I love the story behind Halloween, how it wasn't intended to be anything. It was just going to be the shape, and then one movie, an anthology. We're going to do a movie like this every year, and we'll tell Halloween stories. And so I was like, oh, what if I did something like that? That'd be kind of cool. And then I was like, well, let's just make a movie. Let's just start with something. What is a normal situation? And I really like to think about hyperbole and then look for humor in the opposites. So what's a really simple situation? Well, I would meet up with somebody to do a bourbon meetup. All right, we're going to meet up and trade bottles, or I'm going to buy a bottle because we met on Facebook or something. Well, what if I met up with somebody like Freddy Krueger or Chucky? Or I was like, well, who could I actually pull off? And I was like, well, Michael is iconic, and I wouldn't have to have him do any lines. So the simplicity of it would work. But then also it'd be really funny to do. So as far as like the script, I was like, hey, I write out word for word what my scripts are. I go into what my shots are going to be, plan the music as much as I can ahead of time, because I know that once I'm out there shooting by myself or with one other person, things are going to go off the rails. So the more detailed I can be on the front end, the better I can pivot as things change. Like, for example, in that movie, I filmed it all one day in like twilight hours of a Sunday afternoon. It was like 6 to 7 o'clock, perfect sunlight. It looks like the movie. I'm watching the scenes as they're coming on the monitor. I'm like, oh, this is great. This is exactly what I want. We film a lot of it. I edited all the next night, probably 2 hours of total time between filming and editing. And I'm like, oh, we missed a couple of things. We got to go do some reshoots tomorrow. Well, Monday afternoon comes. I go back to the same location where I'm filming it. And the location I'm filming it at is actually a soccer field for kids to play at. So you can't just walk out with like Michael Myers and a fake knife and spit out a bunch of blood. Then again, I don't really do that in the movie, but I know that's the scene I have to get. So I have to like pivot the location. So the reason that Bandit runs away in that sequence is because I had to get away from where the kids are. That wasn't in the story at all. It ended up fitting like, oh, well, that actually fits. Like he runs away and Michael Myers just pops up. But we actually had a cop walk up to us, an off-duty cop, and like, hey, I just want to see what's going on here. What's the handle of the knife in your bag? Just want to check. And he was cool about it. He wasn't rude or anything like that. But then we just put it all together, and you just kind of hope that it works. I do things partly for me. I do it also for other people. So that was kind of one I was like, hey, this might not go over so well on TikTok because of their AI and the way that it works, the way they're really trying to keep things simple. And it's already bourbon, so it's already marketed towards a 21 plus audience.
Sure. Yeah.
But I really believe that if you're creating just so that other people will love it or like it, you're missing the fun of creating. But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't create things that other people will watch, because then you might just be wasting your time. So
you're channeling your inner Rick Rubin that the audience comes last. Is that what we're doing here?
No. just maybe a little bit. I have a very Andy Kaufman-esque style of humor. And so I really love that type of stuff. Like, so when I announced that Bourbon Bandit was changing to Film and Flask, that was a thing that in my mind happened pretty quickly. Like, all right, well, now that I've decided I'm going to do this, I can't do Bourbon Bandit forever. I can't be a cartoon dog forever. That's not going to work. If this ever goes anywhere like I want it to, hopefully I get a letter from Disney. It's like, cease and desist. Stop it, buddy.
Yep.
But that was something I was like, I really would love to do like an announcement, like I'm shutting it all down. Like I'm too busy with my life and my kids. Meanwhile, I'm like, hey, I got so many ideas. I'm pumping out. I really want to do this. And it allowed me an opportunity to bring on some other friends and creators that I know would really love to be a part of things, but maybe don't have the desire to do it as much as I do. Or maybe they're really gifted at writing and they're like, I don't want to be in front of the camera, or I want to do editing, but I don't have anything to edit. So I think Film and Flask will really give me an opportunity to focus on the things that I like doing, which is like the writing and being silly, making funny jokes, talking about movies, doing flights for movies, comparing bottles to movies or bottles to characters inside of a movie. But Bourbon Bandit had been played its kind of role for me very quickly.
Sure.
Like, I'm ready to be done. And so it's kind of funny. We had a meetup on after the Still Austin fill-up day. We've rushed back to Houston. We have a meetup, like 20 dudes in my backyard at the house. And there's a lot of people meeting me in person for the first time. And they're like, "So what's your name?" I'm like, "Oh, it's Bandit." And they're like, "Oh, I thought you were Film and Flask." And I was like, "No, no, my name is Bandit. That's my name." So it's kind of in a funny transition.
So what does 2025 look for you? Because you've done a couple of pieces on TikTok where you've got this giant board that's like your mood vision board. I'm sure it's next to you right now.
Yeah,
Here we go.
it's in here somewhere.
But like, so what does 2025 look for you?
The 2025 looks like a pretty big step. I think in the past I've really tried to just let it feel organic and natural. I don't ever want someone to watch someone and feel like that's not who he is. That doesn't feel like a real person. There was a couple of creators that like I think the highest compliment they gave me this past weekend was like, "Wow, you feel like the guy in your videos. The way you talk, the way you act,
Yep.
the jokes you're making, the level of animation you have in certain things, and some maybe the more somber moments I carry as just a person. That's probably what I want the most. And so this will allow me to move at a greater pace so that I can continue having some of like the organic live events that I have on TikTok. But I don't want to have like the same content on TikTok and Instagram and YouTube. But YouTube is really where I'd really like to be, doing more long form stuff. Maybe not just tiny films, but like if I go to Still Austin for the day, I want to be able to enjoy it because it's fun. But I also want to be able to make like a Peter McKinnon style 45-minute video of it so that people can see some of that behind the scenes stuff. But I can't do that all by myself with my tripod and my camera, because what ends up happening so much is I go with people and I get great shots of them, but like I'm behind the camera. And so then like as I'm cutting the story right now for Kentucky Phillip Day, I've got to do so much in post to kind of be a talking head and narrate what happens or what the shot is or what we're going to do. And I think it'd be really fun to do that if I had other people kind of with me along for that ride. Not to mention the whole reason I got into this was to hang out with my friends. If Mike did it, I was like, well, if this is a way for us to hang out, let's do it.
Sure.
So let's get some other buddies that maybe have no desire to be in front of the camera. Let's get them on the squad. Let's kind of see what happens. So I've got a whole new like content pillar, whether it's short films that are going to come out monthly, a couple of different weekly series that are going to be recurring, so that it's not like I'm chasing my tail or reacting to the waves of just, I just got to have content. I got to have content. I also want to focus a little more on photography and give some time to writing. So like I've launched a website with some merch to support some of those like tiny films. But I really love to do like, hey, I'm going to be in Michigan. I'm going to this place. I have a story for a script. Let's have some people that are going to be there be cameos in that.
Yeah.
Like, hey, instead of just going to Still Austin and doing a documentary style video, what if we do a dram and drammer, a joke on Dumb and Dumber, but everyone gets to play kind of these cameos of these iconic moments that I'll already write up ahead of time. And then you get to see some of your favorite creators in different settings than you would typically see them. And it's not like it's a super novel idea, but for the bourbon space, no one's really doing that. People do skits, and sometimes it's dry, but I don't think anyone's really thinking about it like a movie. And I want to kind of
well, and especially like outside of the TikTok realm, most of what you see on Facebook is watches and bottles, right? Like that's the extent of the bourbon community. Yep. And so that's why I'm fascinated by what's going on TikTok and the creators that you surround yourself with, because each one of them is doing something vastly different that's interesting in that space. Speaking of vastly different, the other part of your world, and we'll wrap this up here in a couple minutes, but is the movie world, right? Like, and you spend a lot of time in your crazy minivan doing minivan movie club. And so talk to us a little bit about what's different between, outside of the fact that it's two different mediums, bourbon being one medium, movies being another, but like what itch does that scratch and why do you do that one as well?
I mean, I think I do it. So Minivan Movie Club came first. That was a idea, but my co-host there, Nick, we met way back when, and we were enjoying movies on, I don't know if you remember company Movie Pass.
Yeah. Yep.
That has kind of made a resurgence. It's not as good as it once was, but it literally was a credit card. Well, that you signed up for $9.99 a month.
It was a mathematical economic impossibility at one point.
I would argue this, and I
know I've interrupted your spirited debate because it's a Monday night. So is this what we're doing? A spirited debate about movie?
I will give you this. Okay, so mathematically, it doesn't necessarily make sense on the premise, but $9.99 a month, you can see a movie a day at participating theaters. So me and my buddy were like, hey, my wife was pregnant, his wife was pregnant. They, instead of having morning sickness, had like evening sickness. So like 7:30, my wife would be going to sleep. And I'm like, well, I got time. So like, let's go to a movie. We're just two dudes that happen to be friends, talk at church, talk when we're out with our friends, whatever. I'm like, well, we end up talking about movies anyway. Why don't we just go see this movie? And Movie Pass opened up the door to be able to see anything and everything. So no longer was it just like, hey, what are the two movies out that you might be interested in? Now it's like, hey, I'll go see Little Women. It may not be my demographic, but like the best place to see the movie theater or see the movie is in the theater on the biggest screen with the best sound, the way that the director intended it to. So I started seeing anything and everything. So I was like, I always liked movies, but that was like, all right, I'm going to do this from now on. I'm going to make an intention to go do that. And we were like, we should do this. We go in the minivan. We should just make a podcast. He was doing his master's degree, and I was like, well, let's just wait till you're done. Wait till you're done. I had 3 more kids. He had another kid. And I was like, so when are we going to do this? And he's like, let's just do it. Let's just do it. Yep. Movie Pass has since folded and come back. They're in Dallas. They're not in Houston. But I'll tell you this. Movie Pass could have worked. They just made a very critical error where they pitched themselves adversarially to the theaters. They overshot their roadmap for their company where they stated, hey, our long-term vision, we want to be a theater. We want to have private events where Chris Evans comes dressed as Captain America and we do a screening of his event and it's going to be super, super special. And I think the bigwigs at Cinemark, at AMC, at Regal said, okay, you no longer have access to us. What they should have said is, hey, AMC, Bandit used to take his wife once or twice a year to go see the movies. And when he would go, he would spend $40 total on food and beverage because he had already gone to dinner before.
Yep.
What they didn't capture data-wise in the app to be able to demonstrate their true value to the theaters was that, hey, Bandit in the first year went to the movies 62 times. And every time he went, he bought a Coke and a pizza and some candy. So our value is not taking away from your low market items, which are tickets. You don't make any money off of that.
Sure.
You make your markup off of these items in this concession stand. Those are almost complete crazy, profits for them. They're like 800% markup. So they missed out on that. They very much right at the end before they declared bankruptcy and folded for the first time. They started to partner with adjacent restaurants, and they have like certain like coupon offerings, but it was too little too late because they had already shown to AMC and to Cinemark and Regal, like, we're going to try and push you out of the space. And I think that they just really overshot their opportunity because they wanted to be a physical player when they should have been a digital player. They should have been a data partner to be able to say, here's what people are interested in. Here's the demographic information of the people that are actually watching these movies. Here's what they're interested in. That could have been a gold mine for them. And instead they really went blockbuster and were like, hey, we're going to be physical. We're going to have a physical brick and mortar location. We want to compete with you on this, when that wasn't really what their value proposition should have been.
For sure. So what's your favorite movie you've seen this year?
Ooh, my favorite movie that I've seen this year. I've seen every movie that's come out in a big release, anything that's come out in theaters in Houston. So this is not released this year, but I did see it this year, and I think it's a perfect movie to watch right now in between Thanksgiving and Christmas. Go watch The Holdovers. Have you seen it?
Yes, The Holdovers is excellent. Yes,
one of my favorite movies of the year. Obviously came out last year. I saw it in February with my wife. I wanted to go see it in theaters, and she's like, I don't want to go see it. And I was like, okay. The holidays are always really busy with my children and our family, so I didn't get a chance to see it. And then in February when I watched it, I was like really kept by like the simplicity of the story, but the beauty of the story. And then how the way it all wraps up, there's so much sacrifice in it. And what seems to be like a really monumental moment for one character is also just going to be forgotten by the other eventually. And it made me think of all the people that have helped me in my life that like maybe I didn't know it was a big deal to them or what it cost to be this. And I think everyone can attest to a time where they felt alone or scared or spending a holiday by yourself because you're overseas somewhere, work's different, family's different. It just everyone's got a little bit of a special angst for the holidays. I love them. I got no beef with them. I love them, but I've spent some holidays alone, and that movie reminded me of that. And it felt like a warm hug with some somberness. I thought that the cast did a really excellent job. I think the story was simple enough, but still with parts of complexity from mainly Paul Giamatti and I'm losing it, Joy Randolph. She was those two in that role. I was like, I would watch a whole show of this. Like, just give me all of it.
Sure. Yeah. Good choice.
What about you?
So I treat movies a lot, especially in the theater, a lot like I do bourbon with friends. Like, it's the bottle, but it's the people, right? So Pappy by yourself, not as great as Maker's Mark with 20 of your greatest friends, right? So I had a really profound experience with my son who's turning 9 this year. I took him to Godzilla -1.
Yeah.
And he is in Spanish immersion here in Michigan and super into language. So the long story short is he didn't know it was subtitled till we got there. He just really wanted to see this movie. And we got there, and within 15 minutes into the subtitles, he's leaning over to me and telling me what the Japanese is for the word that's on the screen. He's already making the connection, and I'm like, I was not prepared for this to be the experience. So I had a much different experience with Godzilla that I kind of anticipated. So for that reason, I would say that. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I thought I thought Smile 2 was surprisingly good. You and I talked about Heretic. I thought Heretic was really, really good.
Heretic was really surprising to me. I had nothing about it. It was really good.
Yeah. I don't know that there's, outside of this weekend where you've got Wicked, you've got Gladiator 2, and you've got Moana 2, I don't know that the rest of the year, it's kind of a jump ball, because I know that you're going to be first in line to go see Craven, because it's your favorite.
I will say this, too. I'm just looking at my app just to make sure. Like, what else have I seen this year? I thought that Civil War, I thought that was terrible.
Yeah, Civil War was great.
I hated it.
You didn't like it? You hated it?
I hated it. I think it's a dumb movie. Why
a dumb? I can understand not liking it. Why do you think it's a dumb movie? And I was not prepared for this
movie
evening,
because
they
clearly have a cinematographer that cared about beautiful shots. There's some beautiful imagery.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They clearly had a sound director that thought about texturing the movie with good sound and foley through all the things that are going on. I never once lost it like in a Michael Bay movie. Like, there's just so much going on.
Yep.
It was clearly well thought out by certain technical elements. And I even liked them saying that, hey, let's focus on a like war photographer. That kind of gives me a little bit of like Hurt Locker-esque. Well, let's go niche into something. But they sold you on this premise of like, hey, you're going to see what a civil war would look like. Texas and California are on same sides, which one logistically makes zero sense. But if you're going to say that in the movie, like, let's at least figure out why. Like, why would people that seem to sit on pretty ideological ends of the spectrum, why would they align? Give me something. And they never did. You're offering me a movie with Nick Offerman, and you give me like 30 seconds of him in the whole movie, and most of it is of him doing the same thing, just one recording. So he came in, shot for 1 hour, got his check, and left. He was the trailer. Then the best part of the movie, I'm blanking on his name. I feel so bad. From Game Night, Kirsten Dunst's actual husband.
Yep. I'm also
Friday Night Lights. He's in Breaking Bad. I'm breaking on his name, but he's the best part of the whole freaking movie because he's the only part that shows me what it would have been like in a crazy American Civil War where you don't know what does it mean to be American. Are you Florida American? Because that might not be American. Are you Colorado? Are you Missouri American? Are you Californian American? What side of this are you on? That's 5 minutes. It's the best part of the movie, and then it's over. Side note, after they released the movie, they found out the actor that the director had cast in that role couldn't make it. So they asked around, and Kirsten was like, "Oh, my husband's here. He can do it." So he didn't even plan on doing it. He kind of ad-libs part of it. The reason it's great is because of him, not because of the director. And then the part that pisses me off the most about this, because I get passionate about these things, is this. The whole story is based off of this hardened war photographer. She knows exactly what she's doing. She's been here 1,000 times before. And then all of a sudden, towards the climax, she starts having an anxiety attack. I'm like, Why? Under what emotion? She's lost so many friends that are close. These people that have died in the movie, she wasn't even close to. They're just coworkers. So there's no catalyst for this emotion. And then the climax of the scene when she sees the younger version of herself about to get the shot and get shot, she instead of like diving to like knock her down, which is what you would do in a war scene, she just like jumps up, pushes her, and like stands, and then looks around. Pew pew, gets shot, and then she's like, "Oh no, what happened to me? I didn't expect this to happen." I'm like, "Sucker, you knew what was gonna happen." So the director planned the whole thing out because it would look good, and I was like, "You." For like 15 minutes, they lost me because they betrayed my trust. So like, you think this is a good idea? So I thought that it had some good elements to it, but it was so stupid the way it ended. And just like bourbon, if the finish is bad, the drink is bad. If the finish of a movie is bad, it's a bad movie.
And
Full
just
stop.
just like that, he just pulls it all back together. I love it. So before I let you go, I'm going to ask you the same question I asked Mike. What does 2025 mean for bourbon? What will be happening in the space? And how many finished bottles will you be purchasing?
I will be buying zero from Finland, but I actually have plenty of finished bourbon on my shelf. I I only made that series because everyone's commenting on this or that and getting.
I know.
Like,
Yes.
please.
No, I appreciated it greatly. That you're yes. And
What
I had any idea that Civil War would get you this riled up, I would have started there for sure. We would have just gotten you straight going.
It's just anything, man. I can get riled. Me and Mike, we met doing speech and debate in high school, which sounds like I did debate. I just did speech, but I love a good debate. I love a good discussion about something where we can have. Also, it's fun in like a simulated environment about a movie or bourbon, where like your opinion really doesn't matter, but like maybe we
Yes.
can get to some place that we can actually have something for real. But I think in 2025, man, that's a loaded question, and I don't know if I'm the ambassador to speak for that, but
Well, I just like I'm like I totally get that. I guess I'm wondering, put on your crystal ball, having the experiences that you've had this year, and we've sort of got this interesting space where you've got a lot of states arriving in the space and putting out product that's worth talking about now when it probably wasn't 10 years ago. It changes the landscape dramatically where, you're thinking to yourself, I was laughing. I was watching your one of your episodes where you're drinking the juke joint. And I'm like, that was a bottle I literally demolished and had no idea I was going to demolish that bottle. And that sort of comes out of nowhere. And just kind of that feeling of all of these states now that are putting out juice that you're like, yeah, I'm into that. I like what Missouri's doing. I like what Texas is doing. I like, right? Like,
Matt Damon had a really cool quote earlier this year where he talked about what going to streaming did to the movie industry, where he said, by going to streaming, we lost DVD sales. We lost physical media sales as like a way to depend on movies. So that eliminated a lot of small or mid-tier films. We're like, hey, we don't do small budgets anymore because it's got to be very artful, or like you just have to want to do it because the budget's going to be so small. So people get mad that movies like Marvel or Dune are the only things that get greenlit because they're these $250 million budgets. And it's like, well, maybe that's not the best way to make movies. Well, the market kind of changed. So they had to change the business how they operated. I think in a similar way, bourbon is going to change in 2025 where, you're already seeing companies like Buffalo Trace. They're unloading a lot of Weller 12. They're unloading a lot of Stag. And what that tells me, there's a benchmark shortage right now. Like literally, I was at the liquor store today talking to distributor, and he was like, yeah, we don't have benchmark. If you want to order it, we can't get it. We've already reached our allocation for the year. And I was like, allocation for an $8 bottle? What?
that is a sentence I was not expecting this evening.
So the reason why is benchmark is the base juice for all those aged products. So what that means is that they went all in to produce a lot of this stuff. And that probably indicates that, and I'm guessing here, so someone might comment later and be like, oh, he's an idiot. But what that indicates to me is that they're probably going to start doing more single barrel programs. And so that forced scarcity is going to end. So that means that all of a sudden, these bottles that you were chasing, Weller 12, Weller Full Proof, Stag Junior, you're going to be able to get a little bit more available, which is good for people. But that also means that the market's going to react. So independent one-of-a-kind bottles are going to become the allocation. Like, oh, this one very rare batch is going to become highly sought after. And so the reason I really mess with Still Austin and love them is because they have this very strong base in the artist and the musician cask and their bourbon and rye. But then they have their seasonal releases in the rye, the high rye, the red corn, and the blue corn, which all come out in their individual seasons. Then they have their distillery reserve series, the DSR, which is these kind of one-off mash bills that maybe only have 4 barrels in the whole rick house that do that. So once it's gone, you'll never see it again. I think more smaller distilleries will push that, and you'll see other big distilleries play with projects that are like limited runs like that, because they'll have to respond to the fact that they're higher end products. You're still going to have BTAC. You're still going to have, your batches from Heaven Hill and Elijah Craig that people really seek after. But brands like Rare Character have kind of shown people that, hey, maybe a smaller limited run that's more artfully done. Maybe there's a place to be done with that. Very similar to like when Christopher Nolan released the 4K UHD package for Oppenheimer. He was like, I want this to be like a special gift for people. I want them to have a reason to buy this. And I think that bourbon and the whole whiskey spirits are really having to think long and hard on how do we do customer acquisition? How do we get people to think that our bottle is special? And the only way to do that right now is to really look at different techniques, and that requires a lot of art and precision, which is good because that means better bourbon is on the horizon. The floor has risen drastically in the past 4 years since COVID, where so many new people have come into the hobby. I think that's good for people, but I think you'll see a lot of people make the switch that a lot of content creators or aficionados have made in the past 5 years, which is, I'm not chasing this bottle. I'm looking for one of ones, or I'm looking for single barrels that I know the person that picked it, so I know it's going to be off profile in this way, because it's not sustainable to have a liquor cabinet. It's full of stuff that you could get at any liquor store, unless it's just staple things you love drinking, and that's not good for your liver. And I don't advise that for anybody. I don't get drunk. My wife's aunt sent me a text like, "Baby, you need to get a new hobby. You're gonna get hurt." And I'm like, "Auntie, I'm not drinking, but like half an ounce a day. It's all good just to clean out my liver. I'm good."
So I lied. Last question, because I think your answer is profound and I love it. But I want to leave people with kind of an action item. When you're dealing with a one of one, what is Bandit's approach to you guys released a Still Austin one of one, right? So what's your approach on that bottle, right? Do you save it? Do you share it with a bunch of people? Do you drink it quickly? Like when you get when we're dealing in this Rare Character or, Evernorth here in Michigan that does nothing but ones of ones, how should I approach that if I'm gifted one of them?
So if you're gifted, it's a different answer. But what I do, it's like I got our Still Austin something special pick with our Pulp Fiction tater sticker on it. I bought 2. I knew I wouldn't be able to get another one later, so I bought 2. We got our thing there, and it's a little more expensive. But if it's one of one, I never get it again. I want to know that I have it. Worst case scenario, I can always sell it later. I'm not in that game. This one's open.
Yeah.
I'm not in that game, but I think bourbon's meant to be shared. I mean that wholeheartedly. So
yes, and I guess I was asking, like, are you? And I probably already know the answer to this, but like, are you there's never a perfect time, so it's always the perfect time, or there is a perfect time for a specific bottle?
I think there are perfect times for perfect bottles. I mean, so the rule here, you come over to my house, we're in the green room together. Anything that's open, I don't care who you are, try it. Even my enemy, which I hopefully I don't have any. But if you come over here and I don't know you from Adam, if it's open, by all means, pour a glass, grab a Glen. Let's have some. Let's talk about it. You may not care about it at all, but I might give you some recommendations or whatever, but just go for it. But there is a bottle here, and this is relevant because we're talking about Mike. On my birthday, he gave me this bottle. Their Dream Spirits pick. They're 151 proof, 19-year MGP, the Dream Spirit pick. He gave it to me on my birthday. It's still sealed. He gave it to me on my birthday, kind of really nonchalant, like, I'm really cool now, so I can just give these things out for free. And I was like, okay, well, I didn't know you had it like that, brother. That's one that I am waiting for a fun milestone that he has, so I
Got
can
it.
share it with him.
Got
Uh,
it.
he already has one, but there's a grand gesture I think in sharing drinks with people. I just bought my dad a Christmas present today. He loves Scotch, so I've been hunting down a really good Scotch to give him this Christmas because I want to have a celebratory pour. And I think there's something about smell. There's something about, you know, the sounds of everything that just indelibly tied to your memory. And so if you can find some smells and sounds that you can share with the right people, then they're kind of like always with you. Like, this sounds super silly and cheesy. I'm not trying to be like corny, but I lost my grandfather 2 years ago. I've been very blessed. I haven't had to deal with death or loss much. But he's like the only person, he's really, really close to me, really close to my life. Is literally the reason I'm called Bandit. It's a nickname he gave me as a kid based off of a Merle Haggard song. And he drank a lot of bourbon. I would have really loved to have been able to share some with him, but it's just kind of dude's 80 when I was kind of getting into this. So not really the same life cycles, but I'm not going to miss that with the other people that are here. I don't have any regrets. I don't have any sadness because I talk to him all the time. But I know, having experienced love like his, that I want to share that with other people. So whether it's through joy or laughter or being made fun of, making jokes about myself, making dad jokes. I make so many dad jokes and anti jokes that no one else finds funny except me. Again, that Andy Kaufman-esque humor. But you're right. There's something to be said that, like, there's never the right time. So just drink it. But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't celebrate like big moments or find ways to make little insignificant moments seem very consequential and very exciting. My wife, she's a celebrator. She will throw a party for no reason and it'll feel like the Oscars or a wedding. And you're like, man, it's Flag Day. I didn't know it was that big of a deal. Oh my gosh. So I'm sure I'll get a Flag Day bourbon. We'll have a Black Friday bourbon, and that's not because we're just looking for a reason to drink. It's just, you never know what's promised and who's not going to be here tomorrow. So celebrate them while you can, love them while you can, and hopefully enjoy some good movies and bourbon with them.
Bandit, my friend, it's been a pleasure. If people want to find the website, where do they find you?
Find me at filmandflask.com.
All right, brother. Be well. Cheers.
I appreciate it, man. Cheers.